Hello, and welcome to Resolutions, a podcast about dispute resolution and prevention. I'm your host, Alex Green IV. Today, we welcome Hershenia A. Brown. Hershenia A. Brown is a mediator, external ombuds, corporate consultant, financial industry regulatory authority, FINRA arbitrator, certified integrative health coach, speaker, and best-selling and award-winning author under the pen name of Aria Craig. Hershenia's education includes a Master of Business Administration, Graduate Certificate of Dispute Resolution from Pepperdine University's Caruso School of Law, Bachelor of Science in Technical Management, and Board Certification in Mental Health Coaching. She currently serves as the Tri-Chair of Membership for the Federal Bar Association, Alternative Dispute Resolution Section, and on the advisory board for the National Workplace Bullying Coalition that is working to pass legislation to recognize bullying in the workplace as a toxic epidemic and create accountability. While working on establishing her own brand, Hershenia spent some of her free time writing books under the pen name Aria Craig, which earned her awards and placed her on the Amazon bestsellers list in 5 parenting categories. Her books are designed to build bravery, resilience, and empowerment for moms struggling with the stressors of being single, divorced, or in a blended marriage, as well as children dealing with social issues. Our discussion today centers around how dispute resolution can increase mental health issues resulting from workplace bullying. First, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Alex, for having me on.
First, I just want to get just a sense, for the listeners as to would you consider to be a widely accepted definition, or how would you define workplace bullying?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that is very much a general definition, but some people may include their own version depending on what they've experienced in the workplace. It's anything to me in my definition that is harassment or creates some type of discomfort for the person that's experiencing the treatment. And it could also include microaggressions, but someone is purposely, someone maybe is in management or maybe a colleague is purposely trying to create some level of discomfort for you while you're at the workplace.
Okay, so there needs to be some intentionality to it. If someone's just simply, I don't know, a bit gauche or obtuse in their understanding of social graces, does that count?
Yeah, and if you think about also like when a child is going through being bullied, there's the person the child who's doing the bullying, of course, has a target. So they're intending to target a person for a reason. That could be out of jealousy because of their clothes. It could be that they don't have, we've heard research of people and even children that are bullies. There is a huge level of insecurity that's taking place within them or something that's going on within them. It could be something from their childhood. And we're even finding out as research continues that type of behavior can continue into adulthood. And you can find yourself in a situation where you're being bullied by someone, particularly someone in authority, because they have some level of power over you or authority over your position in your job.
Okay. So it's somewhat similar, or quite similar, but just perhaps at a different stage of life to the kind of bullying that you see in school among children and adolescents.
Correct.
Okay.
But of course, as an adult, it definitely has a different consequences built behind it.
How did you first become interested or involved in mental health issues resulting from workplace bullying?
Well, I had a couple of experiences throughout the years with different employers. I had 3 different experiences. So I've worked with different organizations before, and some of them I loved. Some of them I loved my coworkers. I loved what I did. And some of them I actually loved who I worked for. But there were 3 instances, I shouldn't say a couple, but 3 instances in which I experienced it on a different level. So 2 of them actually included racism. One of them did not. One of them was more so a person who just pretty much felt threatened because I was very ambitious in my career, So going to school and trying to better myself from an education perspective and wanted to do better for my family. Because at one point I didn't even realize that I could go up the corporate ladder so quick as a young African-American who was also a single mom. I have a son. But going through those experiences, the first one being working at a company to where I was the only Black person in the department. and being harassed almost every day, like the micromanaging everything that I did, sending me in front of my manager's office in a cubicle, like directly in front of her office, not being promoted for the same position. She actually got promoted into that position when I first started working there. We were colleagues. We were at the same level, and she got promoted into that position, and I had more experience. And she was in school for something completely different. And also going in to complain, because after some point, it becomes uncomfortable having to go through this treatment every single day. You're constantly being scrutinized over your work. You're scrutinized over when you go to the bathroom. If I had a son, my son was young at the time, so having to call him to make sure he was okay if there was an emergency with childcare. And by me sitting outside of her office, she would hear when I'm on the phone. And she didn't have children. So it was very much an uncomfortable situation. And then going into the HR's office to complain about it. And that's what normally happens. I would talk to the person first. In all three situations, I would talk to the manager first, because I want to know if there's something that I'm doing. So I don't want to second guess myself. I don't want to feel like this is a misunderstanding or something that I concocted out of thin air. Like this, is there anything that I did, first of all, to where I'm getting this treatment and you're just not communicating it to me, or something going on with you, and maybe you're doing this to other people and I'm just only seeing it with me. But I did realize after talking with them, it's always, no, there's nothing going on. And it's, a very pleasant behavior. And I'm sorry that, you feel that way. And then we go right back into the behavior or in the treatment, but even worse. And then knowing when you go into HR's department, knowing that you expect HR to look at things and to investigate both sides. But from my experience, and I have people that are in the HR profession in my family. But from my experience, every time that I have gone to HR, they've always supported the employer. They've always supported my managers.
Okay, quick question. What was the nature of the job that you had? Like, what were your job responsibilities and your job title in terms of the instance you just mentioned, where you were positioned outside of your manager's office and you were the only minority or Black person in the department?
And I was in finance in all of those positions.
Okay.
I didn't experience discrimination, but there was a level of bullying there. It was more discreet, though.
Okay, and expand on that for me when you say it was did not necessarily have perhaps racial overtones, and it maybe wasn't motivated by race, but you still felt bullied discreetly. Describe how that was.
That one was a very unique situation. So when I started working there, and I'll just go over it very briefly, when I started working there, because I'm very ambitious, I actually got promoted, and then I got double promoted. So I got 3 promotions within a year and a half. When my manager reported to another person, and my manager was Black. When she reported to another manager, he was a white guy, and I had a really great relationship with him. I had a great relationship with all of my colleagues. She was actually very smart, very strategic, very good at what she did, and she had a lot of other credentials under her belt. But both of us being Black women, we, as you know, we have to do a lot more. We have to prove more. We have to have so many credentials under our belts to be recognized in certain capacities. So that's what I was doing. I was trying to be at that level to where, and I love school, so I just went back to school and tried to enhance my education. I think that she saw that and she felt threatened. And because she saw that I was liked by her manager, once they became peers, she pretty much blocked every opportunity, whether it was within the department, within our department, or a lateral move. So I couldn't move anywhere. And I was already building, and in project management, you build relationships with other departments because you're collaborating with these other departments for a specific goal or a specific assignment or a project. And I felt that because this went on for a couple of years, I believe that she felt so threatened, blocked every single, and I applied outside of the department. I applied within the department, just outside of under her leadership, so I can get out from under her. I even had a mentor, like, could you please help me? Because I can't do this anymore because I could see what she was doing. And what she did was she hired people I'd already gotten to a certain level at that position. So she hired a couple of people who were already a couple levels. I don't want to say beneath, because I don't want to use that term, but I was a couple of grade levels advanced of them. She hired them above me. And even one of them who I actually helped because she didn't have a strong accounting background, I did. I kind of helped her in some of the accounting functions that we did. She hired her in the same position that I was going for. And then when we had to move to a different floor. She placed her in an office and placed me in a cubicle right in front of her, not directly in front of her, but in the same aisle that was in front of her, which is all the way in the back. So it was like going through the same thing I just experienced, like the job before this one at that particular company that I had before working at this company. It was just a little bit different, but it was the same thing. And then, like I said, she just blocked everything. I couldn't move, and to the point where it impacted my mental health, because if I'm ambitious and I'm willing to grow, and I'm one of those people where I think outside of my assignment. So if you give me a task and a position, not only am I going to learn this well, I'm going to figure out, okay, well, what impacts, what are the internal stakeholders here? Where does my assignment, what do you do in your department before it gets to me, so I can have a holistic understanding of how this process goes? And even after, when it leaves my desk and it goes to the next department, what does it look like for the organization, not just for that department, for the organization? I'm very holistic because I'm analytical, and I'm a problem solver. And she did not like that. So that became very stifling for me. And for somebody that's very ambitious, and at one point while I was there, I went back to school, got my master's degree.
Okay.
And I felt inadequate. And I felt like I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but it was a very unhealthy, toxic situation to be in.
Right. Well, I mean, would you describe kind of like unwanted, undervalued, unappreciated? May any of those kind of ring bells, or was it a different kind of?
I would say underappreciated, but I also feel like I was suffocating. That's the best word to describe it. I was suffocating because I knew my worth, and I knew my value, and I knew what I contributed to the organization, but I had someone who was in authority that was keeping me from progressing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And you said that in this position, you had already been double promoted?
Yes, I had been promoted to. When I first started there, I was promoted within 5 months, and then I was double promoted the following year.
Okay.
So I had 3 promotions.
And had she been instrumental, this particular Black female manager that you eventually had, I suppose, issues with you? Was she instrumental in those promotions?
I don't know. I think it was more so her manager, because when we sat down when I had my review, she would tell me that he thought I would be great for this position, or he thought that it would be, he wants to see me promoted. So I think the direction was coming from him. I don't think that she liked it, but she was following under his leadership. But when they became peers, that's when she was no longer working for him or under him. They were now working together. So she now had authority over everyone in her department, because at that point they started to split off the departments. And so some people went under her and some people went under his leadership.
Okay. And, that brings out another good point, in the sense that, many people, especially when we start talking about discrimination and racism in the workplace, they believe it only happens interracially, right? As opposed to whether it be, a person who's of a different race or ethnicity against a person of a different race or ethnicity. And in many cases, because, there's sometimes people see things as a fixed pie, and there's a finite amount of resources, a finite amount of adulation and awards to be given out, right? And, and money to earn. They believe they often, there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, like resource guarding, and a lot of, like you mentioned earlier, insecurity and jealousy, right? Even among people that are of your own group, so to speak.
Yes. And I can say this too, Alex. I actually was very fond of her at the beginning, for maybe the first couple of years, because I loved her, because she was also at one point a single mom. So I loved the way her thinking. I loved how she was herself was very ambitious. She was very strategic. And at one point she became my mentor. So that's when I say fond. I'm fond of her as someone who I thought I could emulate, because I hadn't seen that before. I hadn't seen how a Black woman who was also a single mom, I think that's the key factor, could climb the corporate ladder and accomplish so much. And I just never seen that in my field, in my journey. So I'm like, okay, she's doing it, and it was starting to happen with me. So I'm like, okay, this can be done. As a single mother, we can thrive and get into those positions and show people that we have the capacity, and we can multitask, and we have what it takes to be in a leadership role. And then when that happened, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't feel like I couldn't accomplish that. It was just in working under her at that company was almost impossible once that particular tactic was in place.
This really can't be overstated because, there's this, for all the talk there is about people celebrating each other, right, who have a similar background, whether it be Black women who may be single parents who are also who are pursuing education and climbing the corporate ladder, for all the talk there is about, unity, support, having people that look like you and that have had your experiences, sort of be, those kinds of folks that are your mentors in many cases because of some, I don't know if it's historical. In some cases, that probably is part of it. Conditioning, there are some barriers to that sort of collaboration, right? And that understanding, right?
Right. And then when you have someone as a mentor, there's a level of trust that's there. So I did not see any of that coming. I didn't until it actually happened, because I kind of trusted. I had to learn the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. I learned that earlier this year. I actually was a moderator for the Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit. And one person for one of the segments, she says that there's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A sponsor is going to be the person that's going to put you in front of the people that you belong. They're going to give you that exposure. They're going to put you in places so that you can have a seat at the table to have the conversation. A mentor is going to guide and help you through your goals, but the sponsor is the one that's going to do the action behind it so that you can be in those certain spaces and you can be recognized and you can thrive. And I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't even know that then. So now I'm looking for sponsors, not just mentors, but sponsors.
Right. Understood. Yeah. Because I mean, I would think that both it can be good, right? But I suppose depending on what your goal is and what you need to have in place to accomplish that, to achieve it, it may be more advantageous at a particular time, maybe to have, a sponsor versus a mentor, because maybe a mentor, from the definition you gave, it sounds like that's more of and early on, where you're more in the infancy, maybe of what you want to do with your career or your ultimate goal. But a sponsor is perhaps when you've settled on a pursuit or you've settled on, a focus, but you're really looking to grow in that role and grow as a practitioner or a professional. Would that be okay? Okay. So the thought process a lot of times when it comes to people talking about bullying and the relationship between that and mental health is do you think bullying is perpetrated by those who have mental health issues, or the people with mental health issues are mostly the victims of workplace bullying?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you asked it, I should say. I guess it depends. I can tell you that bullying can impact a person's mental health. The person that's going through the bullying, the person that's the recipient of it, it can definitely impact your spiritual well-being, your mental well-being. You start to question things about yourself. And when you're going through issues, I shouldn't say issues, but when you're having these mental situations like anxiety and depression, I don't know if people understand that could very much cause physical issues. And it can also cause spiritual health. Like your whole being is out of balance. You're questioning things about yourself. And we all know that anxiety has its own symptoms. Depression has its own symptoms. It could throw off your cortisol levels. You're in fight or flight mode. Your adrenal glands go out of dysfunction. Your adrenal functioning can be dysfunctional at that point. The signals to your brain can be imbalanced. There are all kinds of things that happen when you go through bullying. And once you go through that mental process, like I said, it can take you through a whole physical state. You start breaking out in hives. You can't sleep. You have insomnia, which of course we know causes brain fog, because now you can't concentrate. You have all of these cognitive issues that take place when you're not getting enough sleep and your cells are not regenerating. It's just a whole barrage of things that happen. You could throw off your nervous system, you throw off your digestive system, and also your spiritual life is impacted. It could be definitely be compromised, because you're questioning things and you're trying to figure out, why is this happening? How long is this going to happen? What can I do to get out of this? It's just a lot of things that take place in your overall well-being. But I can tell you from my third experience, I honestly believe that my manager had some level of mental health. I think she had a mental health issue that no one, of course, that's private. Of course, no, no one can share that in the workplace. But I don't think, because I don't know what she had gone through in her life, or, there were some things that I know that was shared about a little bit about her marriage before. By the time I started working there, she was divorced. So I don't know what transpired in her life before, and it caused some type of mental breakdown, or maybe she already had something that she was dealing with. But because of that, it was very much it was very micromanaging. We all know that people that micromanage, that's pretty much a response or a result of somebody being insecure of themselves. Like, they don't feel like they could trust someone to take care of a certain responsibility or an assignment. So they're micromanaging everything that they do, and that's incredibly unhealthy for anybody. Everybody wants autonomy and to be trusted that they can do their job. If I need your help, I'll ask you. I don't need you to, every single thing that I'm doing. And then also that wastes time, because I can't get things done if you're looking over my shoulder. But there were other components to that. I was actually questioning her sanity at some point. It wasn't just me. It was a few of us that were questioning her sanity, because before I started working there, it was pretty much a pattern that I had heard before I started working there, pattern of her doing bullying people, and then they're quitting, or they're going on leave, or they're being forced out. And then when I started working there, I just happened to be the target, because I was the one that did not pretty much, I knew what I was doing. And I was actually in a job that I was overqualified for, but I liked the work. So I didn't have to really ask a lot of questions. And I think that bothered her to an extent. But it just got to a point to where the talking to me as if I was stupid. She did. She talked to me like I was stupid, and I have to talk to her. She gave me a whole lot of work, a lot of work that I couldn't. No one could possibly do all of that work in the time frame allowed. And I talked to her. I talked to her a couple of times, and then the switch happened. When I talked to her, it's like I literally saw her face switch. And I'm like, is there something wrong with her? I didn't know what was going on. And if it is, it's like, at least let me know, so I'll know I can be a little bit more compassionate about the situation. But
right. And not to interrupt, how would you describe that switch? I'm just, so I can, someone can visualize, like, was it from like someone who seemed to be responsive and perhaps cordial and making eye contact, to someone who seemed to be quite, off-putting and standoffish? How would you describe her switch?
I wouldn't say standoffish. I would definitely say off-putting. And by this point, the way she was looking at me was almost like, I hate to say this, because I'm Black, she was white. So she looked at, it's like she switched, like, do what I tell you to do. Like, almost like, stay in your place, place. I'm telling you to do this, and this is what you need. Even if she was wrong, it was like, stay in your place. And that is the way that she communicated to me after that point. It was like, everything I tell you to do it. Don't question me on anything. And it was like the talking to me like I'm stupid, not just, do what I tell you to do, but almost like questioning my intelligence.
Okay, so it felt like abuse of power almost.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then it got to the point where it was so stressful. I had to, actually, at this point, I went to talk to her manager about it. And he told me that people had complained about her. people had complained about her, but he said, that's just how she is. So you just got to deal with it, just ignore it. And it's like, that is not a solution. That's what we get told when we're being bullied. And I know from my generation, when we were younger, we were bullied, because I was bullied in not elementary school, in middle school. My mom said to just ignore it and it'll stop. And that was not the case. That's not the solution. It did not stop. So now as an adult, I'm being bullied by my manager, and I go to her superior and tell him what's going on. He's saying the same thing, just ignore it and it'll go away. And it's like, but you just told me that so many people have come to you with the same problem, even outside of the department.
Right. So there's this thought that
had this issue.
Yeah. There's this thought that for some reason, just doing nothing will make it go away in some strange way. So do you know of any, I know it's difficult to kind of perhaps quantify it because of, there's so many variables as to how you define it and what is an incident. But I mean, are there any statistics on the prevalence of workplace bullying?
You know what? There are a lot of statistics out there, and the National Bullying Workplace Coalition actually has those statistics posted on their website. They have a lot of information because they are really working to make this an illegal action in the United States. It is in other countries, but it's not here in the United States. A person that's being bullied for the United States is unkind behavior, but it's not illegal. And that's what they're trying to do, is make it in all states where it becomes legal, because it's a toxic situation that creates all types of issues with the employee. And you're talking about people who, at the end of the day, if they keep going through this experience, there's going to be a breakdown somewhere. There's going to be a mental health crisis. They're going to have to take off of work. So now the company is going to suffer as well, not just the person, but the company is going to suffer. And then when you know that you have this person in place and this behavior has been consistent, why do you still have them? They are a liability at this point. My understanding, this person has been promoted. This person has now since been promoted, and they put someone else in her role. It's just, it's very, I don't understand the thinking process behind that. I don't know if they're trying to cover some things up, but at that point, it's not even just looking at her, it's looking at the organization of how you can tolerate and accept someone who has done this to so many people at your organization. You can give them all the non-disclosure agreements you want, but before they sign that non-disclosure agreement, or whatever settlement terms or whatever happened with that person, they've discussed it with family, friends, church members. So all of these people are aware, and people talk on social media. People talk everywhere. Some communities are very small. It causes so many issues. Bullying is in the workplace is it's so many people that's experiencing it. So many people that are experiencing that from other angles, from position of, or an angle of discrimination, which adds a whole different factor. Like I experienced at the last company that I mentioned. I mean, it's really, really bad, because even to the point to where when you are having so many health issues to where your hair is falling, this is me, my hair was falling out. I even had it to where I had a situation at the job to where I had to ask facilities to change my chair because I had an accident in the chair because this woman was bullying me. So, yes, she was bullying. And then as an African-American woman, somebody even came to me and told me, why don't you do more? And I'm like, I'm like between a rock and a hard place of what I can do, because I did not want to be there at that job. I was not treated fairly. Everybody saw that. But while I'm looking for another job, while I'm applying for jobs I'm actually qualified for, because I was overqualified for this one, but like I said, I liked what I did. I still have to work. I have to have income coming in because I'm taking care of me and my son. I have a family. At this point, I'm divorced. So I have to take care of my household. So until then, it's almost like but I chose to stay there because I think I feared the alternative of not working. What happens? That's a whole other level of stress that's going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. I wound up losing my job, but it was actually I was free from all of the other emotions, but all the other things that I experienced. But that was actually, if anybody listens to that, they could probably say that was probably the best thing that could have happened. That was like my kick in the butt. Like, you just need to this.
Yeah, like a blessing in disguise thing, because
Yeah.
very human emotion of human feeling. You fear uncertainty, especially when you're the primary breadwinner, and all of us have to support ourselves in some way. And so, you don't want to end up getting out of one stressor into just another, which sometimes can be equally as devastating or even more in terms of not being able to provide. Now, we're trying to see where alternative dispute resolution ADR processes are relevant activities. Do you believe that in order for ADR to be an effective tool to mitigate the issues or even resolve the issues that happen from workplace bullying, do you think that we have to have legal protections first, or do you think that ADR can still be an effective tool to have discussions around this, even without it being something that comes out of a court case or that's legally binding?
I do believe that ADR can help at the beginning. You don't want it to get to where there's litigation involved, because at that point, there's so much stuff that's already transpired. Like that's like the last resort of trying to resolve or reconcile the issue. And by that point, when you're talking about a workplace, people, for the most part, that employee-employer relationship has dissolved. Some people are still in those situations. You do have people that have litigation going on. They're still working there. That's an uncomfortable situation to be in, or maybe not, because at that point, everybody's nice to them. Anyway, alternative dispute resolution is definitely a tool that should be used at the forefront, but it's only effective if there is a holistic approach to it. Like if you have an ombuds in place, for example. I learned about an ombuds last year, learned more about an ombuds last year. And that was when I went through understanding exactly what an ombuds is. And when she stated that an ombuds can really impact organizations, because mostly ombuds are in higher education institutions, but you do have them at your companies, like your bigger organizations. They help with things such as workplace bullying. They're a tool that's in place at the beginning when there's conflict with an employee. So an employee can address a concern confidentially with the ombuds. Now, the ombuds is not going to tell you what you need to do or give you the answer. The ombuds is going to be there to help guide you through you making your own determination and understanding what the policy says about that particular situation, and even training. And if a person wants to have some type of solution with whoever is help, like if there's a bully in place, like if a person is going through bullying with their manager, the ombuds can talk to the manager by way of the person that came into their office that states that they're having the bullying. And so they have to be the visitor has to be the one that approves or says, yes, you can talk to my manager. And there can be mediation between the two as well, to get to the understanding of what is going on and what's taking place in that department or between those two people. So, but that definitely has to be by way of that person that came into their office, to the ombuds office, stating that it's okay for the ombuds to talk to the other person. But because an ombuds is not an office of notice, they're independent. So they're not like HR or any employee relations departments where they do those investigations, and they're not for the employer. So I just wanted that to be clear as well. They're not for the employer. They are very much neutral. So they're not working for the employee or the employer. They're basically listening to the visitor that comes into the office that expresses the concern. But that includes when a person is being bullied by whoever in their work capacity. If the organization takes the time, and then the ombuds also creates a report, an annual report of all the people that come into their office, and there's no identifying information, so you don't know who that person is, but it's basically addressing the reason why they came into the office. So if you have a huge chunk of people, if you create a pie chart or some type of graph off of all the reasons why these people or these visitors came into the office, what their concerns were, and you break it down by the percentage or whatever, if you have a huge percentage of people that came to the office because they were being bullied, then that is a cause for concern. They will create this report along with some strategies or some suggestions for resolution to the highest level of leadership of the organization. And hopefully leadership would take a look at that and figure out what they need to change, make some policy changes, implement some corrective action, enforce some corrective action, because some organizations, they allow people to get away with doing things and other people have to abide by the policy to the T, and that's not fair. But if leadership is very much concerned about their resources, your human resources are your most valuable resource in your organization. They help the company run and they make the company look good. And if you're noticing, and some people, like I said, you have people that are that are experiencing bullying or harassment or whatever, they'll get on social media and start talking about a company in a heartbeat. So now the organization looks bad. Like, people know, I don't want to work for that organization because I heard, or I next if it's something that's big or a company that's really big, it's on the news. So now the brand's reputation is being tarnished. So if it's an organization that really takes to heart, what are these systemic issues, internal issues that we're having? And these internal issues actually can make their way or transition into external issues with their customers. So it's a holistic approach. If an organization is looking at it from that perspective, nothing is perfect. You can't every single thing, but there are things that are fixable. And then if you don't know what to do, then bring in a consultant to help you figure out what can we do to mitigate these issues so that we don't keep having these problems. And that could be getting rid of the person or people that are causing the issues, because they are the liability.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, of course, the $1 million question, pun intended, because you mentioned something about an ombudsman or an ombudsperson being independent. So I know that in a governmental context, in municipalities and a federal agencies, state agencies, they have them. Often that's paid through taxpayer dollars or other types of grants, maybe private philanthropy in certain cases. But what ideas might you have, or what do you think have you seen in practice that will incentivize organizations of any size to invest in an ombudsman or to investigate how to have some type of independent dispute resolver or interventionist?
Well, I think that if they go and look or do some research on the problems, and I just want to be clear that there are different types of ombuds, because you do have ombuds, and I can't remember, I don't quote me on this. I think it's the classical ombuds that they do that work for like maybe governmental agencies, that they can do investigations. So you do have a certain type of ombuds person. They're different types that can do different things. But your organizational ombuds they're not supposed to do any investigation. For those organizations, whether it's an organization, a mid-sized organization, a small one, a large, or even governmental agency that really need to, and for the most part, they probably already have an ombuds in place, governmental agency. For those that need, like the organizations that really need to take a look at the concerns and the issues that they've had, if they go to their legal department and their HR departments and say, listen, if they don't already have an ombuds in place, how much money are we losing here due to all of this conflict? Like, how much money are we losing to have or hire? They may even have inside counsel already as a part of their team. They might, and those inside counsel might actually collaborate with outside external law firms to help them with cases. How much money are we losing in litigation? How much money did we pay out to somebody in a settlement, and why? What issues were there that we missed or that we don't know or that was happening? And you do have some organizations that do know. They just choose to throw money at the problem because they know that they can. They could just, give it to their outside counsel and they'll take care of it. And then they just go on about their daily business, which is not healthy either. It's like, why are you throwing money at a problem that you can fix?
Right. And another factor or metric to look at is attrition and turnover, correct?
Yes, that is true. Yes. Not just that, not even just attrition and turnover, but let's go a step backwards and see who we have in place in our that's hiring during the hiring process for like through HR, because you do now. Ombuds probably wouldn't have know anything about this because the ombuds would work with an employee that's already established for the organization. But if an employee is in HR and they are possibly there's some bias in their level of of applications, people who are applying for a specific job, like their names or their location, because we have heard of organizations doing that. Like someone, and you might have somebody in HR that doesn't even know that someone is being rejected because somebody at the first level that's looking at the application is biased because of those terms or those that their name or their location or something like that. But you definitely need to get to the bottom of it by looking, like you said, certain metrics of activity, like you said, attrition or somebody is taking off. Let's look and see, all of these people that are taking off due to wellness, some type of wellness concern. They're on short-term leave. You don't know some of those reasons. You don't know why, but you can do some investigation to see, was there an issue prior to them taking off? What was the communication between them and their manager? Just doing a little bit more of an investigation to figure out why we are having so many problems. Because again, a lot of this stuff is solvable. If you take the time to understand what's going on in your company, some of this stuff is fixable. There are solutions that can help you resolve these issues without them going the extra step of litigation.
Okay. So do you see an ombuds being able, I know you said that in a lot of times in a private context, they don't necessarily conduct an investigation of specific instances, but they may put together some data based on, obviously, with some anonymity preserved, that kind of says, okay, we see that we have, this many individuals came in with a chief complaint of this type of issue at work. Is there a way that the ombuds could perhaps suggest, let's just say if the employee or the contractor or someone is amenable to it, do you see a way where they could go directly to the people, maybe if it's just maybe one person and another, to suggest a mediation or anything like that? Or is that not something that an ombuds might do?
Well, an organizational ombuds can mediate. Some people, some ombuds, from my understanding, just from the network that I've had, some of them do, some of them prefer not to, because you do have organizations that do have mediators already in place for situations. They can mediate between the person that came into their office with the concern and the person that they're having the concern with, but that would be at the approval of the person that came into their office. Like they can't just go and say, well, let me talk to this person. It has to be to where they get the approval and the okay of the person that came into their office to say, yes, you can talk to the other person I'm having the issue with. Or yes, we will mediate. And of course, with any mediation, by me being a mediator myself, you have to agree to mediate under those terms and hopefully come to a solution.
And maybe work with HR to, if there is some type of written solution, that it be added to the person's personnel files, so there's some accountability for what was decided, right?
Well, everything that the ombuds does is confidential. So if the person is the visitor and he or she goes to HR at that point, they might feel like, okay, well, this didn't resolve anything because I'm still having this issue, so I'm going to have to go to the next step. The ombuds will work with the visitor to tell them these are some options that you have, but the ombuds is not going to make the decision for that visitor.
Got it. Okay.
And then you don't want the ombuds to tell the HR, because that means that HR knows that the ombuds, that visitor came in to visit with them. Unless the visitor specifically said so, that yes, you can go to HR, but that's not an area that, from my understanding, ombuds touch. Like we can collaborate with HR to understand what are some policies or what are some rules. Even departments have their own policies. So you can understand the organizational policies, and then you can get drilled down to the departmental policies to help that person, the visitor, come in to have an understanding of what their concern is. Like say if it's something related to taking time off, or whether the rules are coming in late, or my manager, I came in late, my manager is threatening to write me up, and that's a concern. Well, these are the policies and what are you experiencing? But if the visitor wants to go and take that step to go to HR and file a complaint, that will be the visitor. The ombuds will not file that complaint or anything like that for that visitor.
Okay. So really, the ombuds really is kind of like a first line, early kind of interventionist or, participant in this process. But of course, it's confidential, it's anonymous, and it does take some of the pressure off some of the reporters, people who are experiencing these things, because they understand that They won't necessarily be a record of everything that to be shared with HR. There won't be an investigation. There's no binding findings to these things that, that people are required to adhere to and things of that nature. So to some extent, maybe people would be more willing to this kind of intervention with the understanding that there wouldn't be such devastating consequences, or right?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. And
Okay.
ombuds don't even keep records. Like once the problem is resolved or that person is not coming into their office with that issue, they don't even keep those records. Like the ombuds is so confidential that nobody in the organization should even know that who that person is as a visitor that came to see them. If a visitor says, I want you to go to human resources, the ombuds probably is not going to do that. Even though they get the permission from the visitor, the ombuds is probably not going to do that. The visitor needs to go if that's what their next level of resolution is, if that's what they feel like they need to do to get something resolved. If they want to go there to file the complaint, then they can. That's going to be, when I say they, I mean the visitor. The visitor can do that, but the ombuds is not going to go and talk to HR and file the complaint on their behalf. That's not what they're going to do.
Okay. Understood. And I'm sorry if I didn't catch this, but you mentioned the three employers and three instances, where you were the victim of workplace bullying. Did any of these organizations have ombuds?
I knew you were going to answer the question. No, they did not.
Okay.
They did not. And that's really unfortunate because they could have used one.
Okay. Yeah. See, so, right. Okay. So that's even more of an so that helps you kind of understand that, you can see, listen, maybe if I had that outlet and that ability to have someone intervene and kind of discuss and implement some best practices around this kind of stuff and have conversations about it, even that in of itself sometimes can be very helpful, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much. This has been a very eye-opening and insightful conversation. And I can tell that you have a breadth and depth of experience and knowledge about, workplace bullying as it relates to mental health, and how alternative dispute resolution can be a valuable tool in addressing these issues. And I hope that this and other discussions leads to further study in the area and implementation of best practices to facilitate a more supportive and mindful environment in the workplace for everyone. Thank you for joining me, Hershania.
Thank you, Alex, for having me. I appreciate it.